What would happen if a CEO returned to his own restaurant, but this time, no one recognized him? There are places that once felt like home, but when you return after a long time, they feel so unfamiliar, it hurts. That was the first feeling that hit Quinn Carter as he pulled over to the side of the road, staring up at the familiar blue and gold sign that read Carter's Smokehouse, the first restaurant ever named after his mother, Josephine. Beneath the dim lights and a thin layer of dust on the glass, the place that once echoed with laughter now looked like an empty shell. Quinn wasn't wearing a suit, no expensive watch, no trace of the CEO who ran a multi-million-dollar restaurant chain. Today, he was just a middle-aged man in a worn-out hoodie, a baseball cap pulled low over his face, sun-darkened wrists peeking out from rolled sleeves, walking into his own restaurant like a stranger. It had been more than a year since he last stepped foot inside, not because he had forgotten, but because he believed everything was running smoothly. The quarterly reports looked fine, customers were steady, profits were intact, but then came the whispers. A few anonymous emails, some short and cutting online reviews, and a stinging question from an old friend. "Do you even remember the spirit your mother built this place with?" That question wouldn't let him sit still. At the peak of lunchtime, when the place was busiest, Quinn pushed the door open. The scent of smoked meat, roasted corn, and tangy barbecue sauce still lingered, but instead of evoking memories of family dinners around the table, it only reminded him how lost he felt inside his own memories. No one looked up to greet him. At the register stood a girl with earbuds discreetly tucked in, chewing gum so loud it drowned out the country music playing overhead. Next to her, a young man stared down at his phone, scrolling mindlessly, detached from the world around him. No one recognized him. No one even tried. When it was his turn to order, Quinn smiled politely. "I'll have the pulled pork sandwich and baked beans, please." No eye contact, no acknowledgement, just the mechanical tapping on the screen and a blunt question. "That it?" He nodded, handed over some cash. A $10 bill and a few coins slipped from his wallet and scattered across the floor. As he bent down to pick them up, he heard a quiet chuckle from behind the counter, followed by a low male voice. "Another broke guy, huh? Just look at how he's dressed." He didn't need to look to know they were talking about him. In that moment, all the noise faded. He took the receipt and stepped aside, not because he was hungry, but because he needed to know what had really happened to this place. Carter's Smokehouse, once a sanctuary for those left behind, now made him wonder if it still had a heart at all. The smell of barbecue still lingered in the air, but a bitter taste had already begun to rise in Quinn's throat as he stepped into the pickup area. He stood next to an elderly woman with trembling hands, slowly counting out spare coins from her pocket, while behind her, a skinny little boy stared up at the menu with wide-eyed curiosity. Among these people, Quinn felt no pity, only the raw truth of life. But then, from behind the counter, a sound struck him motionless. "You see that guy in the hoodie?" came the voice of Toby, one of the waiters, dripping with smugness. "Looks like he just got off the bus. Bet he won't tip." "Facts," Leah replied, her fingers tapping on her phone, eyes locked to the screen. "Ever since management started bringing in all those community meal programs, this place is full of charity cases. We're busting our asses while these folks act like they're here for a handout," she scoffed. "Honestly, if my mom saw how we're serving now, she'd flip the entire altar table." Toby smirked. "It's not like the owner would care. Heard he's rich, dark-skinned, but never shows his face. Probably sipping smoothies at some resort." Quinn heard it all. Every word, every tone soaked in disdain, each one like a paper cut, not deep, but slicing straight into an unguarded place. He didn't lash out, didn't flinch. He stood still, a shadow watching as his reality quietly collapsed. They say if you want to know someone's true character, watch how they treat the person they believe has nothing to offer them. And today, those behind the counter had revealed exactly who they were. Quinn looked around. Customers came and went, but no one smiled. No one asked how anyone else was doing. The elderly woman in front was still waiting on a sandwich no one remembered. A young mother tried to calm her child with a few crumbs of bread, while the staff gossiped away in their private chat thread. When his tray of food was finally placed on the counter, Quinn didn't step forward to claim it. Instead, he turned, walked to the cashier, looked at Leah, and said quietly, "I'd like to cancel my order." She raised an eyebrow, didn't ask why, just muttered something under her breath and tapped a few buttons on the screen. Done. Thank you. I've lost my appetite, he said, voice low but cold. Then he turned and walked toward the glass door just as it swung open with a light breeze slipping in from the street, though the chill felt sharper coming from inside this place that once was called home. It wasn't that they didn't recognize him. What truly cut deep was that no one here seemed to want to recognize anyone at all. And that, above all else, was the most terrifying thing. The car door closed with a dry, final click. Quinn sat in his old gray SUV, hands resting on the steering wheel, eyes still fixed on the entrance of the restaurant. No one chased after him to ask why he canceled his order. No parting glance, not even a half-hearted invitation to return. He wasn't angry, at least not the kind of anger that makes people yell or pound fists. What he felt was a piercing silence, the kind you feel when standing in your mother's old house and realizing it's become a stranger. The wind outside whispered softly, but the wind inside him howled louder. Toby's words, Leah's tone, weren't just signs of unprofessionalism. They were a confession that this place, Carter's Smokehouse, had lost what his mother once fought so hard to preserve: compassion. Quinn thought back to the image of Josephine by the fire pit years ago, turning meat with one hand and laughing with her husky voice. You know, son, people don't need much to survive, but they do need to be seen, to feel heard, to feel welcome. And now, the very people wearing uniforms printed with the Carter's logo were the ones making others feel invisible. Quinn removed his cap, his hair slightly tousled after a full afternoon of wearing it. He leaned his head against the seat, staring at the restaurant sign reflected in the rearview mirror. The blue and gold neon lights still glowed, but flickered erratically, like the soul of the place was barely hanging on. Then his gaze landed on a small, quiet scene. A little girl, no more than 8 years old, clutching a wrinkled $5 bill, stretching up on tiptoe to reach the counter. She hesitated, looked around nervously, then quietly extended the money without a word. Leah glanced up, shot her a quick glare, then pointed at a sign that read, "Seat yourself." The girl tiptoed away to find a table, her worn floral dress swaying awkwardly with each step. No one offered help, no one cared to notice. In that moment, Quinn felt something inside him fracture. A hairline crack, not dramatic, but deep. He knew that if he stayed silent, what he had just witnessed would continue to happen. Not just to him, but to every single customer who walked through those doors. And that was when he made his decision. He wouldn't leave, at least not before finding out where the rot had truly begun. He started the engine, but instead of driving off, he turned toward the shadowed alley behind the restaurant, a blind spot untouched by security cameras, where the old back door still stood, the same door he used to walk through as a kid washing dishes for his mother. Today, he would take that path again, not to hide, but to listen more closely to the heartbeat of Carter's, if it was still beating at all. Behind the restaurant was a narrow alleyway, its cracked cement stained with old grease, the kind of place where cooks usually stepped out for smoke breaks or shift changes. Quinn turned off the engine, stepped out of his car, and followed the familiar path he once used to help his mother carry trays of soda from the storeroom to the kitchen. A small window was cracked open, just as he remembered, the one that let smoke escape from the kitchen. And it was through that window that he heard laughter echoing. Not warm laughter, but hollow, boastful, and laced with arrogance. "I'm telling you, this place would have shut down ages ago if it weren't for us," Toby's voice rang out. "Quinn, please, I bet he doesn't even remember anyone's name here, just like every other parent out there, names a kid and then forgets about them." A round of giggles followed. Leah: "Yeah, well, that big shot boss is probably somewhere sipping a martini while we're the ones getting covered in grease. No one cares about us, so why should we care back?" Quinn held his breath. But just then, another voice cut through, low, rough, and thick, like coal catching flame. "You two should quiet down. Some of us used to see this place as salvation, not some temporary pit stop." It was Griffin, the head chef who had been with Carter's since the grand opening. A man Josephine once took in after he got out of prison, who once lived under a bridge and now stood in the heart of a multi-million-dollar kitchen. Toby scoffed. "Come on, man. Don't act like this is some sacred temple." Griffin didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "Carter's isn't just a restaurant, it's a promise to the poor, to the forgotten. If all you see here is a layover on the way to something better, that's fine, but don't destroy the place that once saved lives." Silence followed. The laughter died. All that remained was the quiet drip of water from the dish sink. Quinn didn't know whether to smile or break down. Griffin was still there, like a glowing ember in the middle of cold ashes. But if Griffin was the only one left who still believed, that flame would soon die out. Quinn stepped back from the window, returning to his car. Night had fallen, and the restaurant sat beneath a haze of yellow lights, dim and flickering like a memory refusing to fade. In his mind, his mother's voice echoed, "You can't plant a garden and forget to water it. No matter how good the seed is, it will still wither." He once believed he was that good seed, but now he understood. A seed alone was never enough. You have to come back. You have to water. You have to pull the weeds. You have to look with your own eyes and see what kind of roots have been silently choking the soil of the legacy you once proudly called your own. 7:58 a.m. The sky had yet to fully brighten, but Quinn Carter was already standing at the front door of the restaurant. No disguise, no attempt to hide. A crisp white shirt beneath a charcoal blazer, neatly combed hair, and dark leather shoes stepped out from the car parked at the head of the lot. He looked at the glass doors as if gazing into his childhood memories, the place where he once fell asleep on his mother's lap between her shifts. But this morning, he wasn't here for nostalgia. He was here to confront. The night before, he had sent a group message to all staff. Mandatory all-hands meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m., no exceptions. No explanation, no emojis, just one line that turned the group chat silent in an instant. When the watch on his wrist hit 9:02, Quinn pushed open the door and walked in. The first person to recognize him was Shireen, the new kitchen employee Griffin had introduced. Her eyes widened in disbelief, then shimmered with emotion. Griffin gave a subtle nod, almost a greeting from the old days when they stood side by side in the kitchen. Toby and Leah froze. Toby was halfway tying his apron, his hands suspended mid-air, while Leah instinctively stepped back, her face draining of color. Quinn said nothing to them. He walked straight into the middle of the dining area where the staff had already gathered, some standing, others leaning against chairs, the air so thick it felt like burnt sauce at the bottom of a pot. He stood still for a beat, waiting until all the murmurs faded. "I won't speak for long," he began, his voice even, deep, yet it carried clearly across the room. "But I need you to listen, not just with your ears, but with the honesty in your heart." The entire restaurant fell silent. "Carter's Smokehouse bears the name of my mother, Josephine. She passed away 15 years ago. If you had ever met her, you'd know this place was never just a restaurant. It was a second life she created for people who thought they had been discarded." Shireen lowered her head. Griffin stood tall, his chin lifted with quiet pride. "I didn't build this place to get rich. I built it to multiply the chances the world too often forgets to give. But yesterday, I came in here as a customer, stood right over in that corner," he pointed to the same spot, "and I heard things no one ever wants to believe are real." He didn't need to say names. Every eye turned toward Toby and Leah. "I'm not angry. I'm not here to scold, because what I need to understand is this. What happened? How did the place that bears my mother's name become a place where a little girl is too afraid to look up when ordering her food? I look at you and I see people who once carried hope, but I also see that some have let pride and exhaustion wear away at their kindness." Quinn paused. He took a breath, his gaze now resting on the two who could no longer lift their heads. "If my absence is my failure, then the words you chose to speak were your decision. And today, we begin again. But not everyone will be ready for that." After Quinn's final words, the entire room seemed to freeze. No sound, no movement. Only glances, furtive, darting eyes floated through the space as if trying to escape the weight of truth pressing down on everyone's shoulders. Leah kept her head low, her worn sneakers glued to the floor. Toby crossed his arms, his face unreadable, but his right foot tapped the ground, quick, tense, like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Quinn didn't need to name anyone, because that silence, in itself, was the clearest confession. No one objected, no one defended, and that spoke louder than any accusation ever could. He walked slowly to the center of the room, where sunlight spilled through the window and cast a hazy glow across the floor, like a stage reserved for truth. "I'm not here to scold," he said, voice steady and deep, "but I am here to fix what should never have gone wrong in the first place." He looked toward Griffin, his gaze full of gratitude. Some of you have kept the original flame alive. I see that, and I value that. Then he turned back to face everyone. But there are also those who show up every day, take home a paycheck, and treat this place like it's punishment, like the customers are burdens, like this apron is just a cloth to cover their frustration. A small sigh slipped through the room. No one knew whose it was. Tiana, a middle-aged server, slowly raised her hand. "Mr. Carter," she said, I don't know what you saw, but thank you for coming back. There were times I thought you had abandoned us, just like all the other owners." Quinn gave a small nod. "I deserve that," he said. "I let distance turn into disconnection. I assumed the old values would sustain themselves. But nothing stays alive without care." He turned, walked toward the cashier counter, then stopped, turning back once more. "Starting next week, we'll have monthly internal check-ins. Not the kind where people just go through the motions, but real ones. About people, about work, about spirit. I'll be here every week, 2 days, not just to observe, but to listen. We'll also have in-person guest feedback, not through a website, but directly from the people sitting at these very tables." Someone whispered, "It's about time." But this time, the words didn't carry sarcasm. They carried hope. Quinn narrowed his eyes slightly, weighing whether change had truly begun. "But listen closely," he said, his voice slow and sharp like a blade. "If you don't want to change, don't stay here. I don't need performers. I need real people. People who dare to be kind, who serve not for tips but out of respect. And if you don't have that in your heart, that door is still open. No explanation needed." The room remained silent. But this time it was no longer the silence of avoidance. It was the silence of people beginning to ask themselves, "Do I deserve to stay?" The meeting ended, yet no one left right away. The air inside Carter's smokehouse felt as if it was held in place by an invisible force, heavy but necessary. Quinn walked toward the counter and placed 2 thick folders on the surface. He didn't speak at first, just let them sit there side by side like 2 paths waiting to be chosen. Only when people began glancing at each other did he finally speak, slowly and clearly. "I won't repeat what you've already heard, but today I'm offering you a choice, for the first time, and maybe the last." He lifted the folder on the left. "This is the commitment form, for those who truly want to stay, who want to help rebuild the soul of Carter's. Not with words, but with actions. Signing this means you accept the new standard. No bad attitudes, no apathy, no half measures." Then he pointed to the second folder. "And this is a resignation form. 2 weeks' pay, a reference letter, no questions, no blame. Choosing this doesn't make you wrong, it simply means this place is no longer right for you. Both are honorable choices, if your heart is honest." A soft rustle spread through the room as a few people leaned in to read. Quinn nodded. "I don't need your decision right now, but by the end of today's shift, I'll be waiting in the office. 1 form per person, no pressure, no explanations. But once signed, I'll hold to your decision, whether it's to leave or to stay." He turned to go, but paused at the threshold of his office, looking back with a voice that was quiet yet firm. "And please remember, don't choose to stay if your heart has already left." What followed felt like a silent trial of conscience. No one dared to make small talk. Every move was deliberate. Griffin quietly led the kitchen. Shireen scrubbed trays as if it were her very first day on the job. Leah sat motionless in a corner, her hands rubbing against each other as if trying to wipe something stubborn off her soul. Toby disappeared for a while, only to return just before the afternoon shift began. The atmosphere wasn't tense like a confrontation. It felt more like people standing before a doorway, and on the other side was a version of themselves they hadn't yet met. Near the end of the shift, Griffin was the first to walk into the office. He handed Quinn the signed commitment form, said little, only nodded. "This place once saved me," he said. "Now it's my turn to protect it." After him came Tiana, then Shireen, each with their own reasons, but sharing the same resolve. To stay, not out of habit, but because they still believed. Around 4 p.m., Leah entered. She placed her folded uniform on the desk, along with her resignation form. "I never hated this place," she said, "but I never truly belonged here either. I worked for the paycheck, not for something deeper. And this place, it shouldn't just be about earning a wage. Quinn nodded. He didn't try to change her mind. He simply said, "Thank you for your honesty. You're leaving with dignity, and that's worth more than any apology." She walked out, quietly, but with her head held high. And at last, the final person to enter, just as the store closed, was Toby. He placed the commitment form on the desk, grease still on his hands. "I messed up," he said, "but I don't want to leave before I make it right. This time I'll try not to be the reason anyone has to hang their head." Quinn looked at him for a long moment, then answered slowly, "Don't make me regret giving you this chance." Toby nodded slightly. No smile, no bravado. Just a man learning, again, how to stand tall. The next morning, before the sunlight had a chance to slip through the windows, Quinn was already in the kitchen. He wasn't there to supervise, not to evaluate. He was there to feel, to see whether Carter's was truly waking up from a long slumber or just bracing itself to perform a short-lived play. He sat in the corner where his mother used to sip her black coffee with no sugar, a worn notebook always in her hand. Her photo, wearing an old floral shirt, a scarf tied over her hair, eyes bright, still hung beside the recipe board. "I'm about to lose this place, Mom," he whispered, gently touching the frame. But something inside him told him, not yet. There's still a chance. At 8 a.m., the restaurant opened. Tiana greeted guests with a soft smile, sometimes slipping in a joke that made the whole table laugh. Griffin commanded the kitchen like a seasoned conductor, signaling with his hands instead of shouting. Shireen looked sharper than ever, each dish served with perfect timing and taste. But Quinn's eyes stayed on the front counter, the place where every crack had once begun. Marina was gone, leaving behind a space hard to fill. And Toby was trying to fill it with silence. He stood there, no sarcasm, no excuses. He took orders, entered them into the system, said thank you, but still avoided eye contact. Quinn understood. Real change doesn't arrive overnight. It flickers like the first flame in the cold. Then a customer walked in, maybe 19 years old, wearing a faded hoodie, his left hand trembling slightly as he opened his wallet. A shy glance scanned the restaurant as if trying to decide whether this was a safe place or not. Tiana was busy. Toby stepped back. And the one who stepped forward was Shireen. She left the kitchen and softly offered, "Hey there, want to try the catfish combo special? You can swap the fries for greens if you'd like." The boy nodded. "Yes, please." Eyes still lowered. At that moment, Griffin came out from the kitchen, drying his hands with a towel. He patted the young man on the shoulder like an old uncle would. "Take your time, kid. Everyone here had their first day once." Quinn realized it was Isaiah, the one recently referred by the Youth Homelessness Support Program, just like Griffin had been all those years ago. As Isaiah moved forward to pick up his food ticket, Toby glanced away. Shireen smiled, and Tiana quietly added a free pack of cookies to his tray. And for the first time in weeks, Quinn saw a customer eating slowly, without rush, without scanning the room in fear. The boy felt permitted to exist. As the lunch rush eased, Quinn walked over to Shireen. "Did you know who that boy was?" She shook her head. "Isaiah Penn, from the Youth Support Center. Just like Griffin once was. You didn't need to know to treat him kindly, and that's the most valuable thing of all." She didn't say anything. She just smiled, then gave a small nod, as if finally understanding why this place was worth saving. The clock neared 4 p.m. The restaurant had thinned out, with only a few small groups lingering over iced tea in the late afternoon. The scent of food had faded, giving way to the gentle air of a day winding down. Quinn sat at his usual table, the one that gave him a clear view of both the cashier counter and the open kitchen. He turned a pen slowly between his fingers, eyes occasionally glancing toward the door, not waiting for anyone in particular, but quietly watching those in whom he had placed his trust. Leah didn't come back, and she hadn't sent any messages. But the neatly folded uniform she had left on Quinn's desk that morning spoke for itself. A quiet, yet unmistakable act. She chose to leave, and she left with dignity. No excuses, no pretending, just a simple truth. This isn't for me. And that very admission to Quinn was proof that there was still something in her worth respecting. By the end of the shift, Toby was the last to enter. He stood there, hands dusted with cornmeal, forehead damp with sweat. No awkwardness, no performance. He placed the commitment form on the table, took a deep breath. "I've said too much," he admitted, voice raspy. "And I don't know how much people actually heard. But I know I crossed a line. I didn't see it until I looked at Isaiah." Quinn didn't rush to respond. He folded the form slowly, set it aside. "You're not being dismissed, Toby, but I need to know, are you staying to fix what's broken or to repeat it?" Toby looked up, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I want to fix it. I don't know if I'll get it right immediately, but I'm done making excuses." Quinn nodded, then offered a faint smile, the kind a quiet father might give when his child finally understands. "All right, but this time I'll be here to see it for myself. Don't make me regret giving you this second chance." Toby gave a small, closed-lipped smile, nodded, then turned to leave. Not entirely unburdened, but clearly changed. That evening, the restaurant closed with the whirring hum of the floor cleaner, chairs being stacked on tables, and the kitchen lights dimming. But no one joked aimlessly, and no one stood in heavy silence. Someone asked Griffin about the sauce recipe. Someone reminded Shireen to double-check the fridge. And everyone, for the first time in a long while, moved together like a team, something Carter's hadn't felt in years. The next morning, while the sky was still gray, Quinn was once again the first to arrive. He sat in the kitchen, beneath the old photo of his mother. "I almost lost this place, Mom," he whispered. "But now, I think there are still people keeping the fire alive." And he turned on the lights, ready to prepare for tomorrow, a day for those who dared to choose the right path, even when it wasn't easy. A week later, Carter's smokehouse wasn't louder, nor was it suddenly flooded with customers. But something had clearly changed, a silence that no longer felt awkward, a smile that no longer felt forced. The door chime rang again each time someone entered, not because it was pushed hard, but because people genuinely wanted to walk in. Tiana greeted guests with a gentle smile, not to simply do a good shift, but because she truly wanted them to feel welcomed. Shireen wrapped each catfish order like a prize, and Griffin carefully tasted the BBQ sauce, shaking his head with a grin. Still not quite like Mama Josephine's. Quinn stood behind the counter saying nothing. He simply watched, but not to inspect, just to breathe a quiet sigh of relief. He no longer needed to loom like a shadow of authority. Now, he had returned as part of the heartbeat of the place, the keeper of the flame, not the one holding the whip. That afternoon, a man in a gray suit stepped in. His face was stiff, the look of someone on a business trip. He sat near the door, flipping through the menu like he was reviewing a contract. Before he could speak, Tiana placed a cold glass of iced tea on his table and smiled. "The catfish today is the best all week, I promise." The man looked up, surprised, then nodded. An hour later, he left with 2 takeout boxes and a promise. "I'll come back if I end up staying in this town long enough." Quinn sat at his usual table, gently tapping his fingers on the wood. Shireen approached and placed a slice of peach cobbler in front of him, dusted with cinnamon and brown sugar. "Just like your mom used to make," she said, her eyes sparkling. Quinn took a bite, then smiled. "That's the taste," he replied softly. "If she were still here, she'd give you a big hug." Isaiah returned near closing time. This time he wasn't shy. His shirt was tucked in, hair neatly combed, eyes bright. "I got a job," he said, "cleaning at the main bus station. Not much, but steady. I just wanted to say thank you." Griffin shook his hand like a father, then patted him on the shoulder. "Keep going, but don't forget where you started." People started talking about Carter's again, not through Instagram posts, but by word of mouth. A mother told her sister. A mailman told the city hall security guard. A janitor brought a coworker after their shift. No hashtags, but Carter's was alive again. Not perfect, but sincere. Before closing, Quinn stepped into the backyard, looking up at the blue and gold neon sign. One tube flickered faintly in the corner. He didn't fix it, because that flicker reminded him, things can be repaired, but only if you start by accepting they are not yet perfect. Shireen came out the back door holding a folded note. A customer left this on the table, said to give it to the owner. Quinn unfolded it and read the hand-scrawled message. I used to think this place wasn't what it used to be. But today I could still taste her, Josephine, somewhere in the flavor. Thank you. He read it again, then folded it neatly and tucked it into his shirt pocket, like a keepsake. Mom, he said quietly, eyes still on the glowing sign above. We're still watering your garden. Because in the end, he understood. Walls don't make a place like Carter's. Food alone isn't enough to keep people coming back. What keeps a place alive through every storm is the courage of those who are willing to look at what's broken and choose to begin again with their own hands and hearts. In any workplace, culture doesn't just appear on its own. It is built day by day through genuine presence, true kindness, and the courage to make things right. Quinn didn't need a crowded restaurant if it meant losing its soul. What he needed was a place where every single person, from the kitchen to the front of house, understood that they were helping preserve something far more sacred than profit. If you also believe that every organization needs someone brave enough to return and start again from the beginning, then like this video, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss stories that truly touch the heart, and leave a comment with the phrase, "Keep the soul," because sometimes the most precious thing isn't what we see on the surface, but in how we treat one another.